You feel what other people hide, and that rare gift is quietly ruining you. The gift the world punishes you for having is real, and Jung gives it a colder name than you want. The moon pulling that water was never yours. By the end, you will know why it costs you and how to make it yours. Someone walks in, and before a single word, their mood floods you, and you call it your own. You did not choose it. There was no wall where a wall should be, so their sea came straight through. Before this is over, you will know what the gift truly is, and why the world seems to hunt the people who carry it. You will see why hiding it only deepens the wound, and the one move that turns a current you drown in into something you hold. Underneath the seeing, a door has stood open your whole life, and you never saw it. Start with what you have known since before you had the words for it. You feel the room. Someone is bright at the door, and you feel the dread underneath the brightness. A friend says they are fine, and the thing they are not saying lands in your own stomach. You knew which adult to avoid before you understood why. You have spent a lifetime certain of things you could never prove, and write about them so often that being right stops surprising you. The world has a warm word for this. Sensitive, intuitive, a gift, and it is a gift. That part is not in question. What no one prepared you for is the bill. The same gift that lets you feel everyone has quietly turned you into the place where everyone sets things down. You are the one they call at midnight. You say the true thing no one wanted said, and somehow you become the problem for saying it. You felt the lie, and naming it cost you the friendship. You come home from a good evening carrying a weight that belongs to nothing that happened to you. Picture it plainly. There is a tide pool in the middle of your living room where the rug should be. All day it rises and falls, pulled by a moon that hangs where your ceiling should be, a moon that was never yours. When a person walks in, the pool floods with their sea, their worry, their grief, their held breath. For as long as they stand in the room, that water is your water, and you feel it as your own weather. People learn to read the whole day right off your surface, because you show it so faithfully. The warm word never mentions the rest. When they leave, the water does not. The debris stays, and so does the cold. You are still standing in someone else's low tide an hour after they have gone home light. You were handed one story to explain the bill. The world is cruel to sensitive people. They cannot bear your depth, so they punish you for it. That story is worth keeping in view, because part of it is true, and it will earn its full weight before the end. But one thing is worth seeing first. If the seeing were the whole gift, it would not soak you like this. The soaking begins somewhere underneath the seeing, in a place the warm word never looks. You were told the gift was the seeing. What it actually is runs a level deeper, and Jung has a colder name for it. Before we go under the water, there is the cure the world hands you. Therefore, you reach for the advice that is everywhere, the one that works just well enough to keep you reaching. Stop showing it. Guard the gift. Build a version of yourself that gives nothing away. Go quiet. Go unreadable. Become the still, deep lake whose bottom no one can see. Keep every fathom of your depth inside, and let your surface tell them nothing. Give the advice its due because part of it is genuinely wise. Not everything in you is owed to everyone. There are people who should never be handed your softest material, and holding something back is a real skill you were never taught. If the advice stopped at, you are allowed to keep some of yourself for yourself, it would be worth the whole video. It does not stop there. It tells you the mask is the cure. That is where it turns quietly wrong. Jung has a word for the face you turn to the world, the persona, from the Latin for the mask an actor once wore on stage. A persona is not a lie. Everyone wears one, and everyone needs one. The danger Jung marks arrives later, in the moment you mistake the mask for yourself, move in behind it, and build your whole identity on a costume. That is precisely what the hiding cure asks of you. Make the mask smoother, quieter, harder to read. Step in behind it, and call the result your true and protected self. The seduction is that it works on everyone watching. The room believes the calm. Only you know the water is still wild, and the knowing gets lonelier every year, because the better the mask, the fewer people can tell there is anything behind it to reach. A sheet of dark glass slides across the surface of the pool. From the outside, calm, nothing to read. Underneath the glass, the tide keeps coming in. Every sea that walks into the room still floods you, exactly as before. You have not drawn a single boundary. You have only hidden the fact that you have none. You go unreadable on the outside and stay drowned on the inside, and now you are alone inside it, because you have covered over the one signal that used to let anyone see you were struggling. The advice promises something splendid in return. It offers a dense, magnetic, unreadable presence, people who respect you without knowing why, a quiet authority that leaves manipulators disarmed. It sounds like strength, and it costs more than it admits. A lid has to be held. Something must press it flat against a tide that never stops climbing, hour after hour, and that something is you. So now you are paying twice, once for the water that still floods in, and again for the work of keeping the surface still enough that no one guesses. The calm the world admires becomes the most tiring thing you do. Part of why the mask holds people for so long is the story it lets them keep. Admitting you are flooded and without a boundary is a hard thing to say about yourself. Believing you are simply deep, private, and hard to read is far easier to carry, and the mask lets that second story stand. Your porousness gets renamed as mystery. Your exhaustion gets renamed as depth. The wound gets to pass for a virtue, and that version feels so much kinder than the plain one that you stop reaching for the plain one at all. So the cure that promised safety hands you a better mask and a bigger ego, and leaves the tide untouched. People spend years there. They grow expert at the calm surface, and never once discover that the water underneath was never theirs. Therefore, hiding it better is the wrong question. Underneath the seeing, underneath the mask, down in the water itself, there is what the gift actually is. Jung has a name for it, and the name does not flatter. You think of the gift as reading people, a kind of scanner, an instrument you point at someone and get a reading back. You over here, them over there, a clean distance between you across which the information travels. That picture is comforting, and it is also wrong. There is no distance at all. That absence is the whole secret of the thing. Jung calls this participation mystique, a state of psychological identity in which you do not experience yourself as separate from what you perceive. What feels like reading the other person is often a merge instead. Their state does not travel across a gap to reach you. There is no gap. Their state becomes yours, because some part of you never drew the line where you end and they begin. This is why it never arrives like information. It arrives like weather. A forecaster watches the storm cross a screen, safe in a dry room. You are not granted that mercy. When someone walks in carrying dread, you take on the dread as your own, in your own chest, in your own body, as though it had grown there. And if no one tells you the dread walked in with them, you will spend the whole night sure it is yours, searching your own life for its cause. Go back under the surface of the pool. From above it looked like a small, contained body of water with a clean rim. Underneath, there is no rim at all. The water runs out through the walls without a seam and joins the sea in every person near you. You were never a separate pool reflecting the room. You are the room's water, gathered for a moment into the shape of a person. Seen from below, the gift looks less like a fine instrument and more like a missing wall. And it does not wait for permission or for closeness. You can leave a party you enjoyed and drive home hollowed out, carrying the residue of a room full of people you will never see again. The pool does not check who is allowed to pour into it. Whoever stands near the water fills it. Jung adds a second layer, and it explains why this feels like your deepest self. He maps the ways a psyche takes in the world, and one of them he calls feeling, a word he uses in a far wider sense than passing emotion. It is a whole way of knowing that weighs everything by its worth, its warmth or its coldness, what it is worth to you and what it is not. In you, that faculty is enormous. It may be the strongest thing you own, but strength and refinement are not the same thing. A faculty that has never been differentiated runs on automatic, beneath your will, and it cannot tell your feeling apart from the feeling in the room. It takes in all of it, unsorted, and hands it to you stamped with your own name. So the gift is two true things at once, a vast capacity to feel and no working border around it. The capacity is real and rare and yours. The border is the part that was never built, and because the capacity so plainly belongs to you, you assume the whole apparatus did. The flooding, the debris, the moods that arrive from nowhere. You built an identity on being a person who feels everything, and you were right, and you simply never noticed that half of what you felt was on loan. There is a quieter cost underneath the flooding, and over a lifetime it does the deeper damage. Ask yourself a plain question. What do you want? Try to find the answer that is only yours. the one with no one else's hand already on it. For a while you reach, and someone else's answer is already there waiting. The instrument you would use to know yourself has spent so many years reading other people that it hands you their preferences when you turn it inward. You order what the table is ordering. You are moved by the film the room is moved by. You hold opinions that turn out, once you finally test them alone, to belong to whoever spoke last. The merge pours other people in, and it slowly empties the place where your own answers were meant to grow. There is a strangeness here worth naming. The people who carry the gift most strongly are usually the last to suspect it, because from the inside, a merge is indistinguishable from intimacy. It feels like closeness. It feels like love even. You feel another person so completely that surely this must be the deepest way of knowing them. When you dissolve into someone else's sea, you disappear into it and mistake your own disappearing for connection. Closeness needs two people still standing. A merge leaves only one. If the gift is a missing wall, then the world's part in this is more ordinary than cruelty and far more useful to understand. The world is simply walking through an open door, and that, at last, answers the question the title asked. Why does the world punish this? Now the answer, and it does not flatter. The punishment is the predictable cost of a boundary that was never drawn. Sit with that, because the whole video turns on it. An unbounded psyche is simply available, and availability gets used in people as in water. A room without a wall gets walked through. A person with no seam between themselves and others becomes the place where everyone around them sets down what they no longer want to carry, and no one has to decide it on purpose for it to happen. The world meets an opening the way water meets an opening, without intention and without malice, simply taking the path that is already there. There is no committee assigning you your suffering. There is only an open door and the ordinary traffic of people who need somewhere to set things down. Jung calls the mechanism projection. We do not only see other people, we meet our own buried material in them, the parts we cannot bear to own, and we live them out there, in the other person, instead of in ourselves. Everyone does it. It is ordinary. A projection needs a hook to catch on, some answering thing in the receiver for it to fasten to. A bounded person offers nothing for it to grip, so it glances off and finds its way home. You offer an open door, and it is soaked in before the other person has finished the sentence. They hand you their shame, and you feel ashamed. They hand you their rage, and an anger you cannot explain rises in your own body, and you carry it home, and you turn it against yourself. This is why the pattern grows so reliable that it can start to feel like a conspiracy. The person who walks away lighter after every talk with you, the one who gets so much off their chest and never asks how you are, the one who empties out and leaves restored while you lie awake. They are not all predators. Many of them have no idea they are doing it, any more than you knew you were receiving it. Two open channels found each other, and the current ran one way because only one of you had a wall. And the arrangement is stable, which is why it lasts for years. The other person leaves lighter, so they come back. You feel needed, and being needed feels close enough to being loved that you never question the shape of it. So the door stays open, propped by your own longing to matter to someone, and the traffic through it never stops. There is a second half to the punishment, and it waits for the first time you need something back. The door only ever opened inward. Turn to the people who empty into you. Ask them to hold something of yours, and the room goes strange. The one who holds everyone is not allowed to need holding. The gift made you indispensable and unknown in the same stroke. Jung's own line is that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. That is a beautiful thing when there are genuinely two substances, two separate things that touch and change each other. It becomes a catastrophe when one of them is really a solvent, a thing that dissolves into whatever it meets and keeps no edge of its own. Then the reaction never happens between equals. One is taken up into the other again and again in every contact until it forgets it was ever its own compound. Bring this down to a person. There is a man in his early 40s, the one everyone calls, the friend who gets it, the one who can tell over the phone that something is wrong before the other person has found the words for it. He has built his whole sense of himself on this nearness to other people. Then a close friend calls him in real grief, and he does what he always does. He listens, he holds it, he carries it, and afterward he is flattened not for an hour, but for 3 days. He is short with the people he loves, and he cannot work. A heavy gray sits on his chest, and he keeps searching his own life for the source and finding nothing large enough to explain it. The strange part is how completely it passes for his own. It moves exactly the way his grief has always moved, and he would have sworn through those 3 gray days that it started in his own chest. Then quietly, a disorienting question arrives. This grief, whose is it? He lost no one. He borrowed the loss, whole, through a door he never knew stood open, and he has spent 3 days grieving at a funeral that was never his to attend. He is not weak, and he is not a fool. The merge is invisible from the inside and obvious the instant it is named, and folded inside that exposure is a small mercy. If part of the cost was a boundary that went undrawn, and not the world's malice alone, then part of it is finally something a person can do something about. Therefore, everything now turns on the wall that was never there, only the wall. It is the one piece of all this that a person can actually build, and building it is stranger and smaller than any cure you have been sold. Everything you have reached for so far has been aimed at the water. You hide it under glass, or drain it to nothing, or try to feel less. Every one of those fights the flooding itself. But the flooding was only ever what a missing wall lets in. Change the wall, and the water takes care of itself. What Jung points to runs straight through consciousness. It is harder than holding a lid or draining a pool because it asks you to stay awake at the very moment you are used to dissolving. The task is to withdraw your own projections, to take back what you have flung into other people, and harder still, to stop accepting what they fling into you as though it were yours. In his own words, in the individuation process, what were originally projections stream back inside and are integrated into the personality again. The wall goes up in a way you would not expect. You raise it by asking one question in the middle of the flood, while the water is still climbing. Whose is this? Did this feeling begin in me, or did it walk in the door? Watch what that question does to the pool. Every time you ask it honestly, a little of the borrowed water drains away, and the rock at the bottom shows through. There is a shelf down there in one particular shape, a small, plain basin that no visiting tide ever carved. That shape is you. It stood there before anyone walked in, and it will stand there after they have all gone home, and it does not rise or fall on anyone else's moon. Jung's name for coming to stand on that floor is individuation, the slow work of drawing who you actually are up out of the collective sea you have been dissolved in until you stand as a distinct self, drawn clear of everyone's weather, and something surprising sits at the far end of the work. When the feeling function finally comes clear, when you can tell your own water from the water in the room, the gift sharpens. As long as everything floods in undifferentiated, you are drowning too hard to read anything cleanly. The moment you can feel the seam, you can feel the other person precisely as someone genuinely other and keep standing in your own basin while you do it. That is the difference between an empathy that costs you your whole week and an empathy that costs you nothing. It is the same faculty, only now it is yours to hold instead of a current that holds you. Jung writes that the self is our life's goal, for it is the completest expression of that fateful combination we call individuality. The floor of the pool is a small piece of exactly that, the part of you no tide could ever borrow. Give the practice a body. The next time a mood arrives that you cannot account for, do neither of the two easy things. Do not suppress it and do not merge with it. Pause and ask the plain question, whose is this? The honest answer, more often than you would expect, is that it was never yours to begin with. This feels like loss at first. You have called the borrowed water your depth for so long that watching it drain feels like turning shallow. What you are seeing is the shape of a bounded self, dry for the first time. And the people who were used to setting things down in you will feel the wall go up, and some of them will not like it. Their reaction is information, and it asks nothing of you in return. You do not owe the wall an announcement. You only have to feel the floor. There is one place this work is hardest. The question is easy to ask about a stranger on a train. It is almost unbearable to ask about the people you love. With them, the merge wears the face of devotion. Asking whose is this inside your own home can feel like betraying the very people you would do anything for. That feeling is worth waiting out, but a floor you only understand from above is still underwater. Below, on an ordinary afternoon, one person is about to feel it, with someone else's sea pouring straight through him. Return to him. The the man in his early 40s, the one everyone calls, who has always known over the phone when something was wrong, and who spent years certain that this nearness was the deepest thing about him. He had never once questioned it because it was his whole identity. He was the one who felt everything. Then came the 3 gray days after his friend's loss, the funeral he sat through in his own chest for a death that had touched someone else. It frightened him. For the first time, the gift frightened him because it felt like being occupied by something that had never been his. So he began clumsily to ask the question. In the middle of a hard conversation, while the familiar flood rose toward his throat, he would ask himself, quietly, "Whose is this?" He asked it gently, only ever to find where he ended and the other person began. The first few times, he could not tell. The water was too high and the habit too old. Then one afternoon, his sister called, wound tight, spilling a panic that within a minute was climbing in his own body as though it had lived there all along. And for one clear second, he felt the seam, her fear on one side, his own steadiness on the other. 2 separate people, where a moment before there had been one solvent. He stayed in the call. He felt her completely. He said the true and useful thing, and he hung up, and he was still standing. No 3 gray days afterward, no borrowed funeral. He had been fully present with her, without dissolving into her, and those 2 things had never once happened together in his life before. That is the whole of it. No breakthrough anyone else would notice. No announcement. No one thanking him for a wall they never knew was missing. Under the coffee table, his feet stayed flat on the rock, the water low and clear and mostly his own. And now that he can feel the floor, he can finally sort the 2 things that used to arrive fused into one. Some of what drained him for all those years really was other people's opportunism. The ones who found an open channel and used it again and again, and walked away lighter every time. That part was never his to fix, and he stops turning it into evidence against himself, and some of it was the open door, the missing wall, the thing he kept mistaking for the price of a loving heart. That part is his. It turns out to be the only part he was ever able to do anything about. The freedom lives in that sorting. Knowing which is which ends the self-blame and the helplessness in one motion. Leave him there, ordinary, on the couch, still the one everyone calls, still feeling everything, drowning in none of it. The world was never simply cruel to you for feeling too much, and you were never simply a victim of your own sensitivity. You had a rare and real gift, and beneath it a door with no wall. The 2 grew so tangled that you could not tell the gift from the wound. A seam can be learned. That is nearly the whole of what this comes down to. None of this waits on the people around you. They do not have to soften or finally see you, or stop needing what they need. The relief comes from your side of the water, from being able to tell in the moment which of the weather is yours. That is a smaller thing to hope for, and it sits entirely in your hands. You can begin today, in the very next room you walk into. When the weather in your chest changes for no reason, you can name, stop, and ask the plainest question there is. Whose is this? Ask it gently, only ever to find where you end. So much of what you have called your depth walked in through the door with someone else and quietly never left. And when you find that so much of it did, something loosens that has been clenched your whole life. It loosens with all your feelings still intact, because for the first time, you know which of it to keep. The grief that is yours, you can carry with both hands. The grief that walked in with someone, you can set gently back down at the door, without cruelty, without closing, and go on feeling everything that was ever truly yours to feel. The gift was only ever meant to become yours. You do not have to feel less to be free. You have to know the floor, and once you can feel the rock under someone else's tide, you will feel everything you always did and drown in none of it. And no one in the room will ever know that the water, finally and quietly, went down.
Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com.